My husband and I come from the same background. The only difference is that his mother isn't of that ethnicity, so he wasn't raised in the culture like I was. When we started dating, I helped him reconnect with his roots. This eventually led to him reaching out to his estranged father's family and becoming close with them. I think my mother-in-law has sort of held that against me ever since. Throughout the course of our relationship, she has made multiple comments about how she doesn't like the amount of emphasis I put on my heritage. When we told her I was pregnant with twins, she later said something about not wanting her future grandchildren to care about that stuff like I do. I've learned to ignore her comments because trying to explain myself to her has never helped. And I try to avoid conflicts whenever I can. My husband and I decided that the babies would have a first name from our culture, and their middle name would be a typical American name. My parents did the same thing with my name too, so it was just a continuation of that tradition. My mother-in-law ended up seeing texts between me and my husband where we said the middle names. But she assumed that we were talking about first names, so she went out and got the babies matching sweaters, with the names printed on the front of them. She showed the sweaters to me after they arrived. And I thanked her for the gift but didn't correct her on the fact that those were the middle names. I was sort of peeved that she had snooped through text messages to try to find out the names before we told her anyway. So I didn't want to give her their first ones on top of that. Last night when she was over at our house, she told me how relieved she was that we had chosen normal names for her grandchildren, and not a ridiculously difficult to pronounce name like mine. My husband asked what she was talking about. She repeated herself and he told her that actually, the babies did have names just like mine and he expected her to learn to say them. She brought up the text messages and the sweaters she bought, and then my husband explained our plan for their names. She got really pissed at me after that. Said I let her look like a fool for accepting the sweaters instead of telling her the actual names, which we still haven't shared with her, and that she'd be calling them by their middle names since that's what she knows them as now. My husband ended up asking her to leave. And after she was gone he said he wasn't upset at me or anything, but that he thinks I should have just told her she had the wrong info, instead of lying. My dad died and I'm scared my family won't get along. So yesterday after my dad comes home he eats what my mom made for him. Eggs and Spam. To be clear, he has a pre-existing medical history of high blood pressure and gout. First found out when he was admitted to the hospital in 2015 when he fell ill, and we basically had to force him to go to the hospital BC he didn't want to go. He was put on medication since, with changes to them maybe a year or so ago. So back to when after he ate. My half-sister heard a thud around 740-ish and told me to check BC. She thought maybe my parents are arguing. I go down and see my dad on the kitchen floor, my mom behind him a few feet away, and I hear him snoring. I ask my mom a question, get worried, run back upstairs and knock on my sister's door. She calls my other sister and also tells me to stop wasting time, call 911. I was scared and frantic. I wish I called 911 or saw him when he came in so I could maybe have called sooner. They get frantic too and we all start yelling at each other, and I try to maintain order also as I'm talking to 911 person. At some point in all of this my brother-in-law yells for help and I help him turn my dad onto his side. BC he said he could choke on his saliva. My dad stops snoring and we start panicking. The EMS tells us how to perform CPR, but my sisters keep yelling, and so I try to get them working together. They finally start working on it. One is doing compression and the other giving him air and sometimes rotating. Fire department and ambulance gets here and they start doing the same thing but also have defibrillators, and honestly, I'm just in shock still. It was maybe 8:03 p.m. when they came or so, I don't remember, it's all a blur. I checked my phone for timestamp, but I called twice so I forgot when original call was placed. They called it at 8:50 p.m. and I just began to lose it. My aunt comes and my sister is trying to call my dad's work to let his bosses know. We talk about how we want my dad's arrangements and agree on cremation. BC we don't have the money for anything else, but also my sister wants the remains. My mom is bipolar schizophrenic and my sisters and bro-in-law don't get along. Her because of a whole history that would keep you here forever if I tried to type it. My dad was a bad person but he still chose us and tried his best to provide regardless of his fallacies. He had my mom's back too, saying he wouldn't kick her out or place her in a mental home. My sisters kinda want that, I think. but I'm scared to talk about it. My mom is okay sometimes, but also acts up BC of her mental illness sometimes, and my dad and I were her constants regardless of what happened. My mom is old and still wants to benefit from some social security services that my dad had, but my sisters and I think we should get a majority control of his account. There's a lot of renovations to be done. BC he ignored upkeep of the house for a number of years, example, the roof. My mom is not very sad about the ordeal. BC she had a long history of mental abuse from my dad, and I understand, but we for some reason stayed together. It how to move forward except for one moment at a time, and I'm still waiting for funeral home to come pick up his body. It's 8:13 a.m. now, been waiting since night before. And I have been crying, but also I can't sleep, and I'm sorry if this doesn't meet guidelines. I just need to vent. Even though I told a few friends, I'm still in disbelief. How this will moving forward. I believe it can though. But it's hard to stay positive. I'm in a relationship with a guy who also works in tech. He makes $68K and I make $130K. I am a mechanical engineer at a robotics startup. He works at a more stable job doing programming at a large company. He brought me to meet his friends at a party, and they asked me about myself. His friends mostly work in tech too and talked about themselves in terms of their jobs. I told them I'm an hiker, I do archery, I love road trips and camping and riding dirt bikes, etc. Basically talking about my hobbies, because work is just a way to get paid to do the shit I love. It's not how I define myself, and it doesn't come to mind when someone wants me to tell them about myself. One of his friends asked about work and I said, oh gosh, I don't want to talk about work at a party. Spent my whole day sweating my ass off in 95-degree heat trying to replace this busted ass motor just to find the replacement. I wasn't lying or trying to downplay that I have a good job. That really is how I spent my day. And I wasn't in the mood to talk shop at a party. Some other conversations came up casually that probably also made me seem poorer, like me saying that car dealership repairs were a ripoff, and telling my boyfriend that my childhood neighbor's trailer caught on fire and I was gonna visit and help her out. I wasn't doing it on purpose. I was literally just talking about my life, but I guess I gave the impression I was poorer. It got later in the night, everyone was getting drunker, and some of his friends, not close ones though, were making jokes about me growing up in a trailer and being a gold digger, and being ready to jump to a richer guy. Really misogynistic shit honestly, since they don't even know me and seemed to just assume all girls are good diggers. He didn't say anything. He later said it was because he'd smoked weed and gets quiet and has trouble carrying on a quick conversation when he's high. But regardless, I felt hurt he didn't say anything. I got irritated with his friends and asked, now why the hell would you say that when I make twice what he does? His friends went quiet for a second and I continued, there ain't no gold to dig here, not with him or anyone at this party. So do y'all think I'm cheap, or do y'all think? My boyfriend wanted to leave the party shortly after, and he was pretty upset with me for telling everyone I make twice what he does. I said I would have held my tongue if he'd checked his friends himself. But he didn't say anything, so I wasn't about to let them talk to me like that. He said it was humiliating, and now everyone thinks I'm a. And I flippantly said, at least they know I'm a rich. He was angry. I embarrassed him when I spoke up. I was angry I had to say anything at all because his friends were talking shit, so it should be on him to check them. My daughter turns 11 in 6 weeks. She has been begging for a Nintendo Switch. Due to poor grades and overall bad attitude, we decided not to get a Switch. Money isn't the issue, it's her behavior. She acts very entitled and she's lying left and right. I just don't feel now is the right time for a Switch. The theft, on Easter, we, my husband, our kids, and myself, are at my husband's aunt and uncle's house. Aunt and uncle have 2 adult children, one of whom is mentally delayed, we'll call her cousin. She functions about a 10-years-old level but is in her 40s. She lives in an assisted living apartment and has a job where she gets paid $5 a week. So she doesn't get many upscale things unless they are a gift. Well, cousin had an old Game Boy that she saved up to buy and was playing while we were there. She eventually set it down and moved on to playing a board game with us while the kids ran around playing. My kid decided to be an epic turd and took the Game Boy. She snuck it out of aunt and uncle's by asking if she could go to our car to look for a book she had brought, and stashed it in the glove box. She proceeded to hide the fact that she had the Game Boy for several days, even after being asked where she last saw it. Her opening to come clean when aunt and uncle called and asked if we had seen where cousin might have left it. Due to cousin's challenges, she was utterly distraught over her missing Game Boy. It's one of the few forms of entertainment she has, and she worked hard to have it. I'm disappointed about the thievery, but I'm even more upset over my kid's attitude about being caught. I only found out about it because her sisters ratted her out. Even then, she absolutely refused to tell me the truth and tried to pin it on her sisters. It wasn't until I sat there and thought about it that I knew she was lying to me. Once I told her I knew it had to be her because of XYZ did she finally confess. Her behavior only got worse from there. She refused to apologize when uncle and cousin came by to get the Game Boy, and had the balls to act like SHE was the one being wronged. I feel like I need to drop the hammer on her and send the message home that stealing is not okay. I think that purchasing the Switch, with my daughter's help from money she would earn by doing extra chores, and having her give it to cousin might be a good way to deliver that message while simultaneously giving cousin a nice upgrade to make amends. I mentioned this to a friend and they said this would be a move because birthday. I don't really think that matters, but the comment was enough to make me question myself. I do intend on giving my kiddo the opportunity to earn a Switch down the line, just not in such close proximity to this incident. Not sure how or when, since I have a SO to consult, but the opportunity will be provided in some way. Our therapist is of the opinion that my daughter largely has these issues because of the inconsistent co-parenting relationship her bio dad has with my husband and I. My husband and I are big on structure, boundaries, natural consequences, and following through. Her bio dad is the exact opposite of us. He and his family hardly ever tell her no to the things she wants, and give her a ridiculous amount of treats, toys, candy, etc., and this is causing her to be confused, to struggle with our expectations, and express herself negatively. I assure you, we have been addressing these behaviors for quite some time.